Good day, mates. How's the wait for GTA 6 going? In today's video, I'll be going over the hidden, yet very obvious symbolic meaning of the Vanderlyn gang's descent down from the mountains into the Eastern Territories. The gradual decline from the Grizzlies perfectly mirrors the narrative of Red Dead 2's story. As Dutch moves his camp south geographically, the internal structure and general morale of the gang also go south. Dutch's leadership becomes increasingly more doubtful, and his paranoia and erratic behavior drive him further into madness.
What is wrong with you?
The idealistic principles crumble, key members die, and loyalties are tested, ultimately resulting in their bloody downfall. Heading south means more than just the downfall of Dutch's gang. It's also an idiom for how their migration southward results in matters only going from bad to worse. The West had nearly been entirely domesticated by the time Red Dead 2 takes place, and soon takes its toll on everyone involved with Dutch. He makes the foolish decision to head eastward where society is way more advanced and inescapable. The gang has to fight to preserve their outdated way of life that is rapidly ending due to the relentless enforcement of law and order. The physical journey south into more populated areas like Saint Denis symbolizes their forced confrontation with this changing world. Chapter 1 begins with the gang's ascension into the mountains in the middle of a blizzard, no less. The Great Blizzard of 1899 to be exact. Not exactly a paradise they imagine like Tahiti. Despite the harsh, rugged conditions, they managed to remain on top, a step ahead of their pursuers, for the time being. Even though life might not have been the greatest for everyone in the camp, it's nothing compared to their situation later. These were just the beginning of the birth pains. But for the moment, hope is still within sight, morale is slightly regained, and the sun shines a new light on the gang's future. However, the costly mistake of enraging Cornwall quickly began to dim that light. As they descend in elevation into the heartland, they symbolically descend into despair, and Dutch descends into madness. Though the outcome looks bleak, the foreseeable future appears promising. In the Horseshoe Overlook camp, they may not be at their peak anymore, atop the mountain, but they're not at the bottom yet either. The rainbows you can see often here inspire that their situation may improve soon.
It's a sign.
It's a goddamn rainbow.
A rainbow without any rain? Our luck has changed. We're blessed.
Okay.
Look at that. Ain't it beautiful?
Sure, I guess. If you like that sort of thing.
It's a rainbow, Arthur. Everyone likes rainbows.
Maybe there's a pot of gold at the end of it.
Or the Blackwater money.
If only.
If everyone would have not been so active in Valentine and basically everywhere else they went, I think it's quite possible no one would have suspected a thing. But one of the underlying themes here are Dutch's greed and arrogance getting the best of him. The story doesn't work like that though. Instead, just as things look as if they are getting better, Arthur is met by Agent Moron. Time to move again. Contrary to what members think they know of Dutch, he makes the further controversial decision to move south.
So, we're heading south?
Yeah, area called Dewberry Creek.
Arthur!
Dutch wants us to give it a look. Make sure it's clear and a good place to lie low for a while.
I've only known him a few months, but the way he talks, I never thought I'd see him wanting to head south.
Not only into more civilization, but into the antebellum South. Not a very welcoming place, especially with the colored members of the gang.
What we doing so far south, Arthur? I don't like it.
Seems as good a place as any to get chased by the law, Miss Tilly.
You ain't so dumb as that, Arthur. I'm a Negro.
I know. I'll keep you safe, Miss Tilly.
My mama was a slave until she was 15 years old, Arthur.
I'll keep you safe, miss. You have my word.
So much for that southern hospitality.
I'm sorry. Jesus, the rope's caught. Run, Ford spreads.
Now they have gone from the mountaintop, down into the heartlands, and now to the southlands of the United States. Any lower there and they're at sea level. Chapter 3 was a favorite for many gamers out there. But for me, I couldn't wait to leave it because of the red dirt. It was an even more eventful chapter than the previous two, with some of the game's best and saddest moments. This is where Arthur begins to realize they are in serious trouble, and Dutch refuses to take it seriously. It doesn't start out so bleak. In fact, it looks like they may have just found their ticket out of civilization through the promise of Confederate gold between two feuding plantation families. As it turns out, like every one of Dutch's plans, to be a big nothing sandwich. It costs him his cover and Sean by the end of it all. Before they can decide where to go next, they are interrupted by the arrival of the agents. Once again, they've located them. A constant reminder that no matter where they go, they'll always find them. In my opinion, I believe this is where Dutch had the opportunity to do the right thing and surrender for his gain's sake. Instead, he'd rather see his trusted followers drop like flies on his account. The abandoned, decaying plantation at Shady Belle is where they seek refuge next, heading even further from their position at the top of the mountain. No longer are the gang at the peak of their game, but at least they have shelter, and the nearby bayous provide sustenance for the time being. That ever-lingering feeling of hopelessness was very hard to ignore during Chapter 4, no matter how good things started to look there in the beginning. The overall ambience was compelling enough for me to instinctively sense impending doom. And boy was I ever right. If you thought the ending to Chapter 3 was bad, Chapter 4 is going to hand you his beer. Everyone begins to realize the severity of their situation, and for the first time, we see Faith and Dutch doubted. Tensions also rise, and people are becoming a lot more anxious.
Why don't you fuck off back to hell?
Some players might believe that Dutch became bananas after the trolley accident, and while I certainly believe that that did not improve the situation, I think his increasingly erratic and selfish behavior was due to the fact that his ego couldn't handle his minions doubting his plans. He could definitely notice the looks on faces, hear the whispers from every corner, and feel the somber atmosphere the longer Chapter 4 went on. Watching his power slowly slip from his grasp, Dutch sinks his ship lower underwater by making the worst possible choices out of desperation. This insanity-driven chaos comes to a head in the Lemoyne National Bank when both Hosea and Lenny lose their lives over yet another botched robbery, worse than the one before. With the voice of reason by Dutch's side forever gone, the gang's leadership took a nosedive. Rather than rightfully being replaced by Arthur or even John, his new partner becomes that beer-bellied snake. Hell, even Uncle would have been a better councilman than this guy. It was only a matter of time now before the final day dawned for them. As if you couldn't go any lower than a swamp, the story takes you to the literal ocean, a long way from the mountaintop. No turning back now. While the shenanigans of Chapter 5 proceed, Arthur's loyalty is tested most during this stage, as Dutch's true colors become more apparent. Not only faced with the burdens caused by his mentor, but also Arthur's recent diagnosis gives him a new ultimatum. Live the remainder of his days selfishly, or redeem himself before it's too late. The entire duration of Chapter 6 is basically a series of honor-related events and missions heavily focusing on Arthur's choices as he draws nearer to the end of his life. Arthur knows his physical state is beyond saving, but there's a chance to save his spiritual self with the time he's given. He's been given enough warnings beforehand by some of the most crucial figures, I believe, in the final stages of his life. Again, going back to that symbolic parallel between the descent down the mountains and the descent of the gang's power. Just as they're one bad move away from getting captured, Arthur makes the final decision to oppose Dutch's authority and save John's family. Dutch is left to fester in his madness, last seen abandoning Arthur at the top of the mountain. The epilogue was just the icing on the cake. We got the ending we wanted since Red Dead Redemption 1, and we got one of the most badass revenge endings I've ever seen. I guess you could even say that John had his own little pre-redemption arc in the epilogue, since he loses his family, gets down on his luck, but is able to get them all back before blowing it again. However, prior to that knock on the door from Agent Ross, we get to go back where it all began. Back to the mountains. Things go a lot differently for John this time around. The prologue wolf attack is quickly referenced when John makes his way up to Joe and his 3 goons at the pass. This is not the same John Marston that was about to become Wolf Chow. This is Jim Milton. Micah thought Arthur was dangerous. He didn't know who the OG gunslinger was. The American Badass.
You shot me. You shot me pretty good.
Dutch made nothing but the worst possible mistakes from the beginning. Only the smart ones were able to get off the crazy train while they could. The whole time they moved further from the top of the mountains, they moved further from their goals and ever deeper into despair. All the while, Dutch's sanity also takes a plunge, whether that was due to the encroaching pressure constricting the cuckoo right out of him, or the trolley accident. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and cured some of your boredom temporarily. Subscribe if you haven't already, and tap notifications so you can be alerted every time I upload more Red Dead content to satisfy your Red Dead addictions. See you in the next one, fiends!
That's a fine horse you got there.
Appreciate it.
How long you been married?
I'm itching to hurt you.